Introducing the Institution of Surveyors of Kenya live stream and live chat. Do you have a question from any of the following areas? Land survey, valuation, building survey, land administration, engineering survey, estate agency, property management, and geospatial information management. Join the Institution of Surveyors of Kenya live stream and live chat every Friday from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m.
Okay, good afternoon, viewers. Welcome to ISK Facebook live stream. Today, the 24th July 2020. This has been going on every Friday from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. And today we are going to be talking about the land adjudication process. My name is Nancy Washira. I'm the Deputy Director of Land Adjudication and Settlement. I'm a graduate member of ISK. That is the Land Administration chapter. So briefly, I'll take you through the land adjudication process. We start with the history, a brief history. We know that land reforms began in Kenya in 1954 with the Swinnerton Plan, whose main focus was to intensify the development of African agriculture in Kenya. So the plan recommended the enactment of the Land Consolidation Act in July 1959. And the act was applied in Kenya. In western, central, parts of the Rift Valley, parts of Meru, Taita. And due to the intricacy and cumbersomeness of the process, which entailed consolidating individual parcels of land into economic viable units and demarcating the same, the process was cumbersome and took too long. So in 1966, the Lawrence Commission recommended the enactment of the Land Adjudication Act, Cap 284, which became effective in 1968 June. And from henceforth, we now started implementing the Land Adjudication Act, which entails demarcating and surveying the parcels as they are on the ground. Not consolidating, not moving anyone from their place where they are occupying. So to begin the process, we have the preparatory phase. My presentation will have the preparatory phase and then the implementation phase. So in the preparatory phase, we have the appointment of the land adjudication officers, and this is done through a gazette notice. The adjudication officer in turn appoints a recording officer who also doubles up as the demarcation officer and the surveying officer. And then from there now we have the adjudication officer receiving a request from the landowners to adjudicate their land. Upon receiving that request, then the officer liaises with the administration, the local administration, to get the necessary approvals. Once he receives the approvals, now we go to the adjudication officer getting clearance so that we don't interfere or demarcate land or adjudicate land that is already ascertained through other registration regimes. So we seek for clearance from the Director Land Administration, just to be sure that the area we propose to start the adjudication process has not been ascertained under any other regime. Once we get that clearance, we now look for the maps, that is the base maps or the aerial photographs or the satellite imageries. So we requisition for those maps, and once we get those maps, now we are ready to go to the ground and start the work. So the adjudication officer will prepare a notice, which we call a notice to declare an adjudication section. This notice is in written form, and it describes the area that he intends to declare, he or she intends to declare, and the area is based mainly on location, or what we now currently call the wards. So once the notice is ready, the land adjudication officer will liaise with the administration on the ground so that they can arrange for a public baraza in that respective area. So they will liaise together and decide on a date and ensure that the landowners within that location or ward are informed of that date of meeting so that they avail themselves. So the land adjudication officer and the administration officers will go for the meeting. Then he will read the notice declaring that location to be an adjudication section. He will try as much as possible, he or she will try as much as possible to describe the external boundary of the area, that is, and giving the name of the adjudication section, and then inform the residents that now all interests in land in that section will be ascertained according to the Land Adjudication Act. Then the officer will also give a time frame within which all claims will be presented to the recording officer or the demarcation officer, and also informing the landowners that from time to time they will be called upon to come and be able to point out the boundaries to the demarcation officer. At the same time of declaring the adjudication section, the landowners will appoint members from among themselves who will form the committee, the land committee. There will be not less than 10 persons who reside within the adjudication sections. These are landowners who will reside within the section, and they are going to play a very critical role in guiding the officers in the process, and also advising maybe on absentee landowners and other aspects of the culture of the landowners. So in the baraza, the landowners will elect not less than 10 members who will be their representatives, and then they will be appointed in writing to be the land committee members for that specific adjudication section. Then the members now, those elected, will among themselves choose one of them to be the chairman or the chairperson of that panel. So every time they have a meeting, the chairperson will convene the meeting and take forward the deliberations. But once in a while, when the chairperson is absent, those who are there, they can elect one among themselves to be the chairperson for the sitting. So after appointing the committee, now the other preparatory works that are going to be done are that the land adjudication officer will now appoint an executive officer of the committee. This will be a staff of the Department of Land Adjudication and Settlement at the office at the local ground. So this officer will now be able to advise the committee members about the land adjudication process, what is expected of them, what will be their duties, and then the same officer will be recording any proceedings of the committee, and of course advising the committee generally on land adjudication matters. So we are still at the preparatory stage. We have not yet started the implementation of the adjudication process. Then upon appointment of the committee, there is also the land adjudication officer will also appoint another panel, which we call the Land Arbitration Board panel. This one, he will consult with the county, respective county commissioner of the area, whereby they are going to get and to nominate not less than 6 and not more than 25 elders from within the county who will form an arbitration board panel. We shall be seeing as we go along what the function or the duties of this panel will be. And again, the panel will elect one of their own to be the chairperson, and then the land adjudication officer will also appoint an executive officer of the board. So from up to there, we are now seeing the preparatory phase, the appointments, getting the clearance, and getting the maps. So after that, now we are ready to start the implementation phase, which is now the demarcation of the land. So what happens here? The demarcation officer gives a notice. At least he has to give a 7-day notice to the landowners of the intention to demarcate the land. And in that notice, the officer will specify at what point will they start and at what time will they be starting. So that now the landowners within that area can prepare themselves to receive the officers together with the members of the committee, so that the demarcation of the land can start. So once the 7 days notice are over, now the demarcation officer, who is also the recording officer and the surveying officer, can move to the ground accompanied by members of the land committee and start the demarcation work. So the landowners will be called upon to point out their boundaries to the demarcation officer. Then once they point out their boundaries, the demarcation officer will now note on the demarcation map or on the aerial photograph or the satellite imagery or the base map, the boundary as it has been pointed on the ground. Then from there, he or she will record the same information in what we call a demarcation book. We have a demarcation book. So the demarcation book will now contain the name of the landowner, the number the parcel will be given, and a sketch indicating the parcels that are adjacent to that. And then there will be a remarks column. We shall see what will be put in the remarks column as we go ahead. So that now the demarcation exercise has started. So they move from one parcel to another as the landowners point their boundaries, and they are marked noted on the map, and the information of the landowner and the approximate acreage of the land recorded in the demarcation book. In time, you find that there can come a claim whereby two people are disputing about maybe the demarcation that is about to be done, or the ownership or a parcel of land. The demarcation officer tries as much as possible to resolve the dispute on the spot, together with the committee members. But any dispute that is unresolved, what will happen is that now the demarcation officer will refer the disputing parties to the executive officer of the committee. So once they are referred to the executive officer of the executive officer of the committee will receive them. Of course, they will have to go with a written letter saying why they are disputing, what is the bone of contention on the demarcation that was intended to be done. And the executive officer will receive the letter, the complaint, then advise the complainant to make a payment of Kenya shillings 150 to file for a committee case. Then from there, the executive officer will now inform the committee members that a case has been filed or cases have been filed as the demarcation process goes on. And then the committee now will have to sit down and deliberate on all the issues that are raised by the parties one by one. So they will summon the parties together with their witnesses, and they will sit down and deliberate on the matter and come up with a decision. In instances where the land committee members are not able to come up with a clear decision or a decision at all, they will refer the matter to the arbitration board. But if they come to a conclusive decision, then the executive officer will inform the demarcation officer what has been decided, and then he will now demarcate the parcel as per the decision of the committee. If the committee does not make a decision, the matter will be referred to the board. Then the board will also be convened by the executive officer of the committee to sit and of the board to sit and deliberate on the matter, and the disputing party will also be required to pay, that is Kenya shillings 300, and that has to be done within 14 days. In the event that the committee makes a decision and one party is aggrieved, the aggrieved party is also allowed to make an appeal to the board, and that is also done within 14 days, and they make a payment of Kenya shillings 300, and they do it also in writing. They appeal in writing, stating why they are not happy with the decision of the land committee. So again, the matter will be referred to the executive officer of the board. Then the land adjudication officer, remember this is a panel of between 6 and 25 elders. The land adjudication officer can convene a panel, can appoint 5 out of the 25 to form a panel to hear any matter that is referred to it. In this instance, maybe it is an appeal against the decision of the committee. So the panel will sit and deliberate on the matter and come up with a decision, which will now be read to the parties, and then the executive officer will now refer or pass over the decision to the demarcation officer, who will now demarcate the land as per the decision that has been given. So in the demarcation book, what now the demarcation officer will do is that there is a remarks column. So he will indicate on that remarks column the decision that has been issued by the committee and then by the board. And then that decision will now be implemented both on the record and on the ground. So that is now the process of demarcation. So the demarcation officer and the committee, they will continue moving from parcel to parcel, demarcating individual plots, demarcating also if it's a public utility, there is a school, there is a watering point, there is any other facility. So they will go on demarcating and giving a number to every parcel. So once all the parcels within a certain adjudication section have been demarcated, then the survey has been done, and the demarcation map has been prepared. Now that one can say the demarcation process has come to an end. What will happen is that now the demarcation officer will transfer all the information in the demarcation book to what we call an adjudication record. This is a record that contains, we have the name of the adjudication area, the adjudication section, the name of the landowner and the address, the contact, the ID number, and then it is signed by the landowner, by the executive officer of the committee, by a witness, who can happen to be the demarcation officer or any other person, and then the demarcation officer. So they will have to sign that adjudication record, and so the demarcation officer will now fill an adjudication record for each parcel that appears in the demarcation map and in the demarcation book. Once the demarcation officer has filled all the adjudication records, every landowner, as I have said, has to sign. There are cases where a landowner may refuse to sign or is absent, cannot be traced. There is a certificate on the same adjudication record which allows the executive officer of the committee and the demarcation and the chairman of the committee to sign. So the fact that a landowner has not been able to sign the adjudication record does not invalidate it in any way. It can be executed by the chairman of the committee and the executive officer of the committee. So once that is done, now we have the demarcation officer, the recording officer, and a surveyor from the Department of Survey looking at the demarcation map and the adjudication records. So there is a process of verification that goes on to ensure that every parcel on the map has an adjudication record, and every adjudication record or parcel recorded also has a map, is appearing on the map as it is appearing on the ground. So there is a verification process that is undertaken, and once that is ascertained that it is correct and it depicts more or less what is on the ground, Now we have the adjudication officer, the land adjudication officer, preparing a notice to publish that register as complete. What do I mean by a register? In this instance now, the adjudication record and the demarcation map forms the adjudication register. So now the land adjudication officer prepares a notice, and again, because it has to be read in a baraza within the adjudication section, he liaises with the local administration and convenes a baraza and informs the members of the adjudication section to avail themselves on a certain date for a meeting. Then now the adjudication officer will inform the landowners that the adjudication register is complete and that they have been given a chance, or they are going to be given a chance of 60 days from that date to inspect that register. So the officer will inform the landowners where the register will be displayed so that they can inspect it, and inform them the hours within which they are supposed to inspect the register. So the 60 days will be allowed for all the landowners to come and inspect the original register. When the officer, or when we are preparing the adjudication record, it is normally done in duplicate. So in this instance, the land adjudication officer is displaying the original adjudication records and the demarcation map. The duplicate adjudication records are supposed to be dispatched to the Director of Land Adjudication and Settlement the same day that he goes to publish the register. So after the 60 days, or within the 60 days, we are expecting the landowners will be inspecting the register, and if they find any omissions or commissions that are not according to what they presented as a claim on the day of demarcation, or maybe according to the decision that was given by the committee or the arbitration board, they are allowed to file an objection case. This is done in writing to the land adjudication officer and accompanied by paying a fee of Kenya shillings 500. And from there now, the land adjudication officer will prepare what we call an objection register. That is a register that indicates so-and-so has filed an objection against so-and-so and against parcel number this. And the receipt number for payment is this. So that is basically what the objection register entails. Then there will have to be a remarks column whereby it will be entered the decision that will be given during the hearing of the objection. So at the expiry of the 60 days, what the land adjudication officer will do is now compile the entire objection register, compiling it, and get to analyze it and know which parcels have been affected by objection and which ones are not affected by objections. The Act allows for parcels that are not affected by any objection case to proceed on and to be registered. So what the officer will now do is, after verifying the parcels that are not affected by the objection cases, further verification will be done, and then those parcels will be forwarded to the Director of Land Adjudication, and then the maps, demarcation map, will be forwarded to the Director of Survey. From there, there will be further checking of the same. Then the maps will be printed, an area list will be generated, and the area will be entered. There is part 6 of the land adjudication record, where the area will be entered, and then from there, a certificate of finality will be prepared and signed by the Director of Land Adjudication and Settlement, and forward now the register. That is the printed maps together with the area list and the certificate of finality, adjudication register, the map and the area list will be forwarded to the Chief Land Registrar for registration, preparation and issuance of title deeds. This will be accompanied by a list of all the parcels that are subject to objection cases and any court cases that might have been filed in the process of adjudication, of course with the consent issued by the land adjudication officer. So that marks the phase of finalizing the parcels that do not have any objection case. Now for the parcels that had objection cases filed against them, what will happen is now that the adjudication officer will prepare a program to ensure that all the filed cases are heard and determined and the decisions that are arrived at are implemented. So the land adjudication officer, after making the program, will call upon the adjudication officers within the adjudication area to arrange and plan on determining the cases. This will entail preparing summons to the disputing parties and informing them the date when their cases will be heard and the venue where their cases will be heard, so that they can avail themselves and their witnesses for the deliberations. So the land adjudication officer will avail themselves on that particular day together with the parties, and the proceedings will go on. This will be recorded in writing. Of course, the complainant will be given a chance, or the objector, to state their issue. Then the respondent will be given a chance to also defend themselves. The land adjudication officer is allowed to consult the committee or any witness for clarification of issues, even go and view the land if necessary before they make a decision. So once all the objection cases have been heard, determined, and the decision is implemented, it could be there was an issue, they had to go to the ground, maybe subdivide the land, or the boundary, maybe amend the boundary in one way or another. So that one now is implemented at part 14 of the adjudication record. It details the objection which had been filed, the objection number, who had filed it, the date it was heard, and the decision. So that one is written down, the decision that was arrived at. The same is also indicated in the remarks column of the objection register. Then if it entails going to the ground, then they go to the ground, and the amendments are also done on the ground. So once all the objection cases have been heard and determined, again, verification has to be done. The adjudication record will be checked to ensure that part 14 there is information, because it was affected by an objection. So part 14 of every adjudication record must have a decision that was arrived at. Then the remarks column of the objection register must have the information, the decision that was arrived at, and then of course the map, if there was any alteration on the ground, will be amended. So the surveyor will look at the map, and then the land adjudication officer will also look at the adjudication records. So both of them will try and reconcile the records. After that, now the adjudication records will be forwarded to the Director of Land Adjudication and Settlement, and the maps will be forwarded to the Director of Survey, and the process will repeat again. That is, there is verification again, and then there is also the printing of maps and generation of the area list. Now, remember we had forwarded, the land adjudication officer had forwarded the duplicate adjudication record. Now, this time the duplicate adjudication record of the parcels that were affected by objections will have to be amended to conform with the original. So the decisions in part 14 of the original adjudication record will be, the same information will be transferred to the duplicate adjudication record at part 14, so that now both of them are in conformity. So once that is done and the verification is done, again the adjudication register, that is the records, the adjudication records and the maps, will be forwarded to the Chief Land Registrar for preparation and of title deeds and issuance. The difference at this time is that now no certificate of finality will be issued, because it had already been issued earlier. What now will accompany this is the same list that had been forwarded previously to the Chief Land Registrar, informing the officer that these parcels had been affected by objection cases. So this time the information will be that the objection cases have since been heard and determined, and these parcels are now finalized for registration and issuance of title. At the same time, remember there are those who will not have been satisfied with the decision of the land adjudication officer in determining an objection. Those ones will also be given another 60 days to file an appeal case to the Cabinet Secretary. So now, as we forward the register of those that have not been affected by appeal cases, we shall now also include a list of the parcels that have been affected by appeals, so that the Chief Land Registrar can now restrict those parcels until that time when the appeal cases will have been heard and determined and implemented. So that now finalizes the parcels that were affected by objection cases. What about the parcels that now have been appealed against? So the person who has been aggrieved by the decision of the adjudication officer, as I have said, is given 60 days to file an appeal case in writing and filing a memorandum of appeal and paying a total of Kenya shillings 600 and an official receipt issued to that respect. So the land adjudication officer now prepares an appeal case file. In this file, we will have the memorandum of appeal in the file, filed in the file, and any previous cases. If there was a committee case, the proceedings will be in that file. If there was an arbitration board case, the proceedings will be there, and also the objection case proceedings will be filed there. A sketch of the land will also be filed there, and a duplicate copy of the receipt, payment receipt, will also be included in the file. And any other information that the land adjudication officer would consider that it would be important to inform the person who will be determining the appeal case will also be in the file. So once that is done, now the file will be forwarded to the Director of Land Adjudication and Settlement. We have an appeals office. The appeals office will receive the file, look at the file and verify that all the documents are intact, and then from there the case file will be issued with a case number, and the case file will be forwarded to the respective Deputy County Commissioner of the area where the land adjudication section falls. These the Deputy County Commissioners have been appointed through a gazette notice to determine the appeal cases on behalf of the Cabinet Secretary. So then from there now, the director will just wait until the cases have been determined. So it is upon now the Deputy County Commissioner to prepare a program to determine the appeal cases depending on other functions of COSCOM. And facilitation will be done by the ministry to facilitate the Deputy County Commissioners to hear and determine the appeals. So the summons will be prepared by the Deputy County Commissioner's office to summon the parties, informing them the specific date, time, and venue where the cases will be heard and determined. So once the parties appear, then the case will be heard. The appellant will give the side of why he or she felt the decision of the adjudication officer was not sufficient. Then the respondent will also give their part of their input, and from there the county commissioner is allowed to visit the ground, is also allowed to get witnesses, get statements from the witnesses if the parties have witnesses, or he or she can consult further any person who can be considered to be able to give an opinion. So once the Deputy County Commissioner is competent, is now confident that the matter is exhaustive, then a decision will be given, and the parties will be informed of that decision that has been given. And from there, the Deputy County Commissioner will arrange to forward the case file back to the Director of Land Adjudication and Settlement, and inside will be the handwritten case proceedings together with the typed case proceedings. So once the case file is received in the Director's office, the Appeals office will look at the decision that has been given. If it entails work on the ground, that is going to the ground and maybe exercising a part of the land, or reconfirming the boundary as it is, what we do is that we write to the surveyor on the ground. So a letter is written to the surveyor on the ground enclosing the proceedings of the appeal case, so that now the surveyor on the ground is able to go to the parcel, specific parcel, of course after summoning the parties and informing also the land adjudication officer. So they go to the ground, visit the parcel, and do or implement the decision as per the orders that were given. So once that is done, the surveyor will forward the map and the area to the Director of Land Adjudication and Settlement, and that will be implemented in the you remember we have the duplicate adjudication record, so the duplicate will be amended to conform with the decision that was issued during the determination of the appeal case, and from there that implementation or that decision will be forwarded again to the Chief Land Registrar, so that now the restriction that had been placed on that parcel will be lifted, and the land or title deed now issued to the person who was awarded the land as at the final tribunal. And that, I believe, marks the end of the land adjudication process. It's quite elaborate, but again it has its own internal checks and balances to ensure that everything is done in a very impartial way. So viewers, thank you very much. There are some questions that were raised. After taking you through the process, I believe maybe some of the questions will have been answered, but I can see one question about the challenges that we face in the implementation of the land adjudication process. As you have seen, the process itself has 4 tribunals, inbuilt tribunals. That is the Land Committee, the Arbitration Board, the Objection Stage, and the Appeals. So this is a challenge to the department, because we find there are so many cases which are filed in the course of the process. And as you have seen, when the Land Committee members, when they are doing their work, that one has no financial implications. But for the Arbitration Board members, it has a financial implication. Those members are paid. So you can imagine if the cases are so many, and you have to have the panels resolving over 400, 500 cases, and they have to be paid, they have to be facilitated to go and visit the ground, they have to be picked from a certain area to be taken to the section, because these are elders who come from the county, not necessarily the adjudication section. So the cases, the backlog of cases has been one big challenge in the process of adjudication, and then also court litigations. We have found instances where a court order can stop the entire exercise of a whole adjudication section, and we have to wait for years until the matter is resolved before we move on. At times we have had the matter settled out of court so that the process can continue. So basically those are the 2 main challenges, the cases and the financial implication, because the process is quite elaborate. So viewers, thank you very much for the engagement. Let us continue chatting, and we can use the following forums: WhatsApp 0722 429 0724 929737. Again, we can continue chatting on WhatsApp. 0724 929737. You can also use the ISK website, www.isk.or.ke, or through email at info@isk.or.ke. Thank you very much and have a blessed afternoon.
Introducing the Institution of Surveyors of Kenya live stream and live chat. Do you have a question from any of the following areas? Land survey, valuation, building survey, land administration, engineering survey, estate agency, property management, and geospatial information management. Join the Institution of Surveyors of Kenya live stream and live chat every Friday from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m.